This week, extreme weather predictions, on the mend with VR, and the last 4 years have been the hottest on record. The climate is changing. Average global temperatures are rising. As we continue to release more CO2 into the atmosphere, scientists are repeating their warning that humanity faces extremely difficult decisions about our future.
If we choose to reduce the risks from a changing climate, that will require reducing our carbon dioxide emissions quite dramatically over the coming decades. And the implications of that are fundamental transformations to society about how we generate our electricity, how we travel around, what diet we have. And those are the difficult choices that, as a global community, we have to take.
Professor Ed Hawkins has summarised the average global temperatures in this simple graphic, with 1850 on the left and the present day on the right.
What you see from 1850 up to 2018 is that global temperatures over that time have risen by about 1 degree, with lots of variations from year to year.
These rising temperatures will lead to more and more extreme weather. And it certainly has been extreme recently. Australia has just suffered its hottest month on record, with wildfires in the south, floods in the north, and temperatures of nearly 50 degrees Celsius. At the same time, the US has been gripped by a vortex of polar air. Here, temperatures have dropped to nearly -50. In Japan, severe and unpredictable weather events happen yearly, making precise weather information critical for disaster preparedness. Typhoons can bring transportation to a standstill, with highways being closed and airplanes and trains halted. 2018 saw particularly violent weather. Last July, the city of Kumagaya hit record temperatures of 41.1 degrees Celsius. And in the same summer, heavy downpours led to floods and mudslides that left 225 dead. Over 8 million people were urged to evacuate. Monitoring rainfall is hard and relies heavily on weather radar systems, which you don't find everywhere and which only have a certain range. At Weather News here in Japan, a new system is training artificial intelligence to work out rainfall from satellite images instead, allowing for rainfall approximations across the globe. This is the world's largest weather provider. It has 3,000 weather monitoring sensors and 2 satellites, and it broadcasts rolling weather reports from its office in Chiba City. But weather forecasting relies on having as many sources of data as possible, and so the company also gets its information from its customers. Every day, users of the Weather News app chat about the weather and upload 20,000 photos of their current weather conditions. Using a combination of more AI and human moderators, these photos and texts are turned into real-time weather data, a kind of cloud sourcing, if you will. As well as providing weather forecasts for us ordinaries, Weather News also provides bespoke services for airlines, for example, to do with areas of turbulence along the flight path and the best ways to avoid those, whether you go over or under them. And also, interestingly, the best times during the flight to serve the airline meal when it's not so bumpy that you end up with all your food on your lap. However, the biggest business is collecting readings from ships and then advising them on the best trans-ocean routes to avoid the worst of the weather. Weather News told us that they can save a large cargo vessel up to 5 million yen in fuel per trip. But this place doesn't just deal with weather prediction. It now provides a potentially life-saving service for another type of extreme event. The 2011 tsunami claimed more than 18,000 lives in Japan. But it was found that the collision detection radar on a Japanese Coast Guard vessel just off the coast of Fukushima had actually detected the oncoming wave. Believe it or not, radar systems had never before been used to detect tsunamis.
We have installed 28 radars along the coast all over Japan.
These radars can detect a sea level difference of between 3 and 10 meters at a distance of 20 kilometers.
If we can detect the tsunami, so we have a space to evacuate for 10 or 50 minutes. So that's very much valuable time for the people to evacuate.
And as well as warnings about what's going to happen in the immediate future, Weather News is also looking to take advantage of longer term predictions too. As the climate changes, some are spotting new shipping opportunities. As the Arctic ice recedes, a new route is becoming more accessible. It's becoming possible to transport goods by ship from Japan to Europe through the Vilkitsky Strait in the Arctic Ocean, rather than going all the way around Africa. In order to make that route safer, Weather News has launched one of the only satellites that can photograph the Arctic to provide more accurate sea ice information. And then there's the special service that they provide for convenience stores, where they'll advise a store what to order in based on tomorrow's weather. For example, if it's going to be hot, more ice cream. If it's going to be really hot, more sorbet. And the extreme heat is a worry for next year's Tokyo Olympics. Discussions are underway to start the race at dawn to try and prevent deaths from the intense heat. Here at Weather News, they're working on a system which will predict the best places for spectators to find shade and breeze. The amount of data required to predict even tomorrow's weather is enormous. But for a commercial operation like Weather News, finding new ways to use that data means new services and ultimately new income for a very expensive business.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Uber launched a boat service in Mumbai to beat the city's notoriously bad traffic. Sportswear brand Puma started searching for people to test its new self-lacing shoes. And 230 new emojis were approved for universal use, with dozens of new accessibility-themed icons, including wheelchair users, prosthetic limbs, and service dogs. There were also new food and animal emojis and a drop of blood to represent menstruation. It was also the week that Reddit, the so-called front page of the internet, was reportedly raising hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. Chinese company Tencent is said to be leading the funding round, which could see Reddit valued at almost $3 billion. A police trial using facial recognition in the UK has seen one man charged and sent to prison. The Met Police were using the technology over 2 days in East London. Another person was fined £90 for verbally abusing the officers after trying to avoid the cameras. Apex Legends is being called the first real Battle Royale challenger for Fortnite after being played by over 1 million people in the first 8 hours of its release. The game from Electronic Arts and Respawn was also the most watched game on Twitch. And finally, Saudi Arabian citizen and humanoid robot Sophia now has a little baby sister that you can take home thanks to a successful Kickstarter campaign. Hanson Robotics hopes sales of the robot will encourage girls to explore careers in robotics and coding.
Worried about bots sending emails from your account? Use this easy method to be notified quickly if they get in. Add a fake email address to your contacts. If a mass mail goes out, you'll get an undelivered message for the fake address. And then we recommend changing your password.
Last year, TikTok was the world's 4th most downloaded app, topping Instagram and Snapchat. The company behind it is now valued at $75 billion. That's more than Uber.
But if you still haven't heard of it, then don't worry, because I'm going to fill you in. The bulk of the users are in China, and most of them are in their teens or 20s, and they seem to be doing things like this. Excuse me a moment. So now I'll need to use a filter to make my hair ginger. Ooh, red doesn't seem to be an option. Shall I be green spice? I'm sustainable spice. Let's go with that. That's very 2019. Let's go! What am I doing?
You can lip sync to your heart's content, although it's better if you know the words, as well as use stickers, filters, or add a spot of augmented reality. Or you can simply post what you wish. But if you're struggling to see the point in all this, well, millions would disagree. We've seen this app grow since Chinese tech firm ByteDance bought its predecessor Musical.ly. And now, according to research by the South China Morning Post, it has 500 million active users. With 1 million fans, British comedienne Laura uses it to post sketches and has become involved with hosting events for the company as her followers have flourished.
What I like most about TikTok, it's short, it's concise, it's easy to use, but there's all these different features. You can duet, you can react to other people's videos. And I think the big appeal is that you can copy other people's sound bites. So I could do a sketch using another comedian's voice, if that makes sense, and people can do the same with mine. Hi, what can I get for you today? They've got some famous voices there, they've got some old Viner people on there, lots of different sound bites to choose.
Vine may have died a death, but clearly other platforms like this are thriving.
But on the flip side, this is just another compelling app taking our eyes away from, well, the real world.
And that's a distraction that the UK government this week highlighted to parents. They released new guidelines on screen time, including banning devices at bedtime and meal times. Meanwhile, the appetite for these apps still seems to be growing. You've just got to hope they'll be used sensibly.
Luckily, I've only got one fan.
That was Sustainable Spice, and I don't feel the need to say anything more about that piece, so we'll move on. Now, we've been banging on about virtual reality for an age, and while it's failed to ignite the imagination of consumers, I mean, how many VR headsets do you own, for goodness sake, it has started to catch on in areas like simulation, training and healthcare. Mark Chislak has been to Sheffield to investigate.
So just make sure it's tight enough as well. That's it. Yeah. Okay, keep your grip on your right hand.
Yes, got it. So what I see, there's different types of games, and the game that I was playing was a bow and arrow one, and you have a bow in front of you. You need to pick it up and then get the arrow behind you and then just let it go, and then it shoots and pops it.
Here at Sheffield's Children's Hospital, they're trialling some surprising therapeutic technology. With certain kinds of injuries, exercise can be a vital part of the rehabilitation process, ultimately leading to the patient getting better sooner. The problem is, getting children to perform these exercises isn't always easy.
Right back.
Ooh.
Most of our kids have quite a long-term condition that they need to carry on doing their exercises for sometimes several years.
So remember to keep that one held, so a tight grip on the one on your right.
When they're doing the same things day in, day out, it gets really boring, no one wants to do it. Sometimes it's painful. It's just not really fun. They want to be out playing and doing things with their friends.
Which arm is the injury in again? Is it your left or right arm?
Making use of virtual reality, researchers from Sheffield Hallam University have developed a system that they think will make children more likely to perform rehabilitation exercises by disguising their treatment as play.
This version of the project is for upper arm injuries primarily. The injuries that are normally from burns or from like an accident that they had from a fall. So remember, yeah, you can swap hands, that's it. Remember to look up as well to see where you are.
So how did you hurt yourself?
I burnt myself with a cooker lighter. I scarred my arm and my belly.
We arrived at the decision to make the two games, like the scenarios of climbing and archery, based off talking to occupational therapists and the kind of movements that they needed their patients to do. One of the motions that they need to do is a lot of reaching behind your back and kind of a lot of upper arm movements. So we thought, I wonder would archery work? because there's a quiver behind your back. You do that same motion of reaching behind to grab the arrow, and then you're getting the added bonus of pulling back the bowstring. Then we looked at things like climbing, and we just thought that was natural fit as well, because there's a lot of overhead motion, so you're really reaching out.
The climbing, it feels realistic.
While Harry has been treated for burns, Emily here has an entirely different issue.
Emily's got a hereditary multiple exotosis, so it's like a hereditary disease that she's picked up from her husband, on her husband's side of the family. So it means that she has extra bone growth.
Let's go for a higher one. Well, it's really fun because you're not seeing like stuff that you usually see every day. Like you're seeing a whole new kind of world in it. If you have a big imagination, then it definitely makes it bigger. It's kind of a bit more playing than exercising, even though you are still doing your exercises. Like, it's fun as well. Oh gosh,
Do you need a break or anything like that? Is your arm tired or?
No, it's fine.
She didn't find it easy, whereas before she would have given things up very easily, but she wanted to keep going. She wanted to pop another balloon.
Yes, got it.
She wanted to reach that next thing, but she's just been an absolute trooper. She just has a smile on her face every day, so it kind of encourages me to be positive.
There we go.
We've had kids come in that can only get their arms up to here, and then they come in straight away and they're picking the arrows up and getting full range of movement and not even noticing. And then when we interview them after, they said that they didn't even notice any pain. So it's been a big shock to me how well actually it has worked to do what we needed it to do.
Now, I don't have an injury, but I'm going to give this VR setup a go and see what it's like when I put the headset on and what it feels and plays like. So, here we go. As a VR experience, this really does succeed because it is really quite fun. After playing for a little bit as well, you can understand how, when the children are playing this, they get so wrapped up in the experience that they forget that this is actually helping them recover. This project was born out of work Ivan and his team had already created, which used VR to help distract burns victims as a form of pain management. It's early days for this technology, but they hope it could have a wide variety of healthcare applications.
Working on other kind of aspects such as pain reduction for burns, and we're doing some work with amputees, learning how to use a prosthetic arm. So it's a lot of experience-based training. And we have a couple of other projects that we're currently just looking at around kind of stroke and chronic pain as well.
But the final word goes to Emily. She might be a fan of the VR, but I do wonder if she'll be pleased to get the external fixator on her arm removed. Will you be pleased to get that off?
Yes. It's quite annoying.
Brilliant. That was Mark Chislak in Sheffield. Now, this weekend is one of the biggest dates in the British movie calendar. The BAFTA Film Awards are taking place at London's Royal Albert Hall. And what better way to celebrate than by chatting to one of those nominated in the Best Visual Effects category for their work on Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
I can't move against Grindelwald. It has to be you.
Technically, you can do just about anything these days. So I think more of our job, and I think what we're set with the challenge by both Jodie Rowling's scripts and David Yates, is to creatively push the envelope and use the technology to aid that. We had some very specific things that Joe had written in the script, but we also had like Newt's Hospital, where it was maybe a few more background creatures that we could go on some of the same journey that we did with the case. But one of the key creatures was the Zulu. You know, it's fairly specifically written as like a Chinese tiger-like creature. One of the animation artists built it and animated it and got it moving. And then really it was a voyage of discovery, working out how it would move, how it would look, what its tail would be made of, etc., etc. In the script, it described it as it runs 1,000 miles a day, and Tim and I were always like, my God, you know, wow, how are we going to describe that? How are we going to show that? So we came up with maybe the idea that it could magically leap and bend time, distort space-time, and land in a different space so it could cover a large distance very quickly. It's over a year's work just for that one moment in terms of concept and working out how on earth to do it.
The moment has come to take our rightful place.
Nagini appearing when we read the script, we went, oh my God, Nagini's a woman in this film, not a snake. And we wanted to try and come up with a kind of authentic way to turn a woman into a long tube. How are we gonna do that to make it feel, real? And we came up with the idea that really maybe she's almost consumed by the snake rather than physically kind of extending out. You would have her being wrapped in her own coils, disappearing and then coming out as a snake. So we had a contortionist, so Claudia Kim, who played Nagini. We showed her obviously what we were planning, and she acted the first portion of the shot. But then we had another contortionist in who was dressed in a matching costume, and she did the first portion of the shot. So for real, she bent over backwards and put her head through her own legs. Got shot elements of Claudia Kim kind of pushing herself along the ground and turning her head up, matching kind of a previs that we had done, which then was glued together with a full CG version of the human character and a full CG snake. So again, all in all, that's about 14 months worth of work for that one moment on film. I don't think you've seen a woman pulled into a wall and turn into a snake before. So it's really just trying how to get those moments over, but as I say, feeling as grounded and real as possible. We just wanted to make it feel like what would happen if you were actually physically there watching that happen, rather than it feeling like an effect. And that's what I think the technology gives us the ability to do now.
The wizarding and non-wizarding worlds have been at peace for over a century. Grindelwald wants to see that peace destroyed.
Fantastic stuff, and of course we wish all of the BAFTA nominees the very best of luck for the big night. Next week we'll have more awards contenders for you as we continue our deep dive into the world of visual effects. And before we go for this week, this. It may not be as graceful as a figure skater or as fast as a speed skater, but unlike many people, this robot taught itself how to skate on ice. At the Computational Robotics Lab at ETH Zurich, Professor Stelian Koros and his team developed a modular robot with 3D printed parts. Each leg can be built for any type of locomotion, from walking to rolling to ice skating, and each robot can have any number of legs. They then wrote algorithms that describe the physics for each type of movement and terrain.
The only thing we tell it is how one ice skate behaves on ice. In particular, the fact that it's free to move in the direction of the blade and it has high friction forces in a direction that's orthogonal to it. After this, the robot figures out entirely on its own how to move on ice.
Using this machine learning approach, different robots can learn to autonomously navigate any terrain. Researchers hope that this will lead to affordable, easy-to-design robots that could be used for search and rescue operations, to inspect dangerous sites, and even for deliveries to difficult-to-reach areas.
I envision a moment in the not-too-distant future where it will be as easy to create robots as it is to currently make structures out of Lego blocks, for example. I think this is a really exciting motor skill that we would like robots to learn, not necessarily because it's useful, but rather because it combines so many different challenges into one beautiful performance.